All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first afternoon update, midday update of this week. Today's date is Tuesday, May the 28th, and we're coming at you here from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, after an exciting weekend for the city on the back of the Raptors taking out the Bucks, making it into the conference, or rather making it into the NBA Finals for the first time in franchise history, first time in I think 25 years. So great time in Toronto. However, let's take a look at some of the news that came out today after the morning update, which Georgie covered for you guys around 9 a.m. So let's take a look at some of the news that came out after that, anything that's squawked as well, and then we'll take a look at our pivot charts. We'll take a look at the quote board, see where the volume is at, where the daily change percentage is at, and then we will take a peek at some of the key levels in both of these markets today. And, if you guys are sitting in on this update, please make sure to say hello in the chat. I've got the chat open there. So if you guys are in there, make sure to say hello, drop in. It's always nice to see some interactive feedback here as we go through. So with that being said, let's get to the news. Georgie covered anything in the morning, so we will take a look at what's come out after 9 a.m. And to that point, we had a couple of figures coming out of the States. We had March S&P Case Shiller, the 20-city month-over-month figures. Those came in at 0.9%, 0.09% versus 0.5% expected. Year-over-year number came in at 2.68% versus 2.55% expected. And we had the housing price index that came in at 214.09 versus 213.80 expected. The more significant number on the economic agenda today was the consumer confidence numbers, the May consumer confidence. That came in at 134.1 versus 130 expected, which is the highest reading since November. Another low impact event that came out was the May Dallas Fed manufacturing activity, which came in at minus 5.3 versus 6.2 expected. Outside of that, let's see if there was a couple of China-US trade war squawks. Again, the China Global Times editor-in-chief, who's been quite vocal the last 2-3 weeks, Hu Zhijin, he tweeted that based on what I know, China is seriously considering restricting rare earth exports to the US. China may also take other countermeasures in the future. So a little bit of stoking the fire as it relates to that China-US trade war. And as I'm looking up here at Bloomberg at the moment, I can see that there's a current headline with trade war turmoil. So big thing to keep in mind is having a squawk available as any updates come through. These have been market moving for the last couple of weeks. So having one of those squawks handy will keep you on the right side if any breaking news is dropped. If the US side or if the Chinese side have any updates in the developments, it's great to have a squawk in order to hear those and get yourself positioned on the right side of the market. So with that being said, nothing else really scheduled for the remainder of today's session. We pick back up, I believe, tomorrow. Again, nothing too high impact tomorrow. The real high impact news this week is that preliminary GDP, the quarter-over-quarter figure coming out on Thursday. Outside of that, relatively quiet as far as the economic agenda is concerned. And as such, we'll be expecting a little bit of quietness, maybe a little bit of consolidation coming into Thursday, at which point we do expect some volatility to pop back in on the back of that GDP. Outside of that, as mentioned, your China-US trade war, any updates with regards to that can give us some volatility here in the markets. So I see one, John Hunt. Ola, thanks for the updates. My pleasure, John. Thank you so much for showing up here and commenting. It's great to see some feedback coming in interactively there. So with that being said, let me switch over to my charts now that we've given you guys the news update. And we will take a quick peek here at the quote board, first of all, the pivots, and then we'll take a look at the actual range bar charts. So with that said, let's jump on over to the charts and let's take a look. So Just make sure the screen shows up here. All right, awesome. So quote board, what we've got is crude oil futures up top and S&P futures down below. Crude oil, what you will notice first and foremost, volume is at 849,000, which is quite significant considering last week we were seeing on average around 500,000 around this time of the day. So nice volatility, or rather nice volume in crude. Crude's definitely seeing higher than average volume. On today's session, we are currently up 0.61% on the session. Not sure how it's 0.6 as we are below the previous day close, so I might have to check that out. But in general, we are below the previous day close and the pit session open. So a bit bearish on that front for crude. S&P 500 down here, 918,000 contracts, so just about on par with with the average. We've been seeing around 1 to 1.2 million on the more volatile days, and we are sitting near that level, 918,000, albeit that we haven't seen too much direction on the SPOOs today. It's been quite choppy. However, the trading room, we were able to keep the team on the right side based on that fake breakout above the overnight highs. That's what we were looking for, and we were looking for a pullback on a break of those highs, and that's kind of what we got. So the team did quite well overall in both of these markets today. Daily change percentage, pretty much flat, 0%. Previous day close at 28.32 quarter, and we're currently trading at the 28.31. So sitting just below the previous day close, sitting right around the current session open. So not too much as regards to direction on the SPOOs, but we've had pretty good movement from the range that's in play at the moment between those overnight highs in those 40s and those overnight lows in those 22s. So that's what we got here on the quote board. Pretty good liquidity in both crude oil and S&P 500. Daily change percentage as well, not looking that bad either. So with that being said, let's change over to the pivot charts and let's take a look at what these guys are suggesting. So on your left-hand side here, if I zoom out a touch, you will find crude oil chart. And on the right-hand side is S&P 500. So what you'll notice at the moment is we are currently retesting that pivot around those 58.90s. You can see that this level did hold as a support coming into, Asian session and even coming into the London session after the 528. You can see that the bulls kind of held this pivot as support once, twice, 3 times, and pressed it up into that R1. On the cash session, we did catch another bid almost up into that R1 level around those 59.60s. And then we had the sellers really step in on the break below the open, press this thing back down below that pivot, almost into that S1. S1's at the 58.40s. On the back of that, we've seen a rotation back up into the pivot. Now this is a line in the sand here, and what happens next will likely dictate the tone of the market for the remainder of the session. That pivot should be seen as resistance now, since it held a support, broke through. Now we're coming back up into it. So on a technical concept, this is a support turned potential resistance. So this is a flip zone. Generally what you see is when a level holds support and it breaks through the next, or rather the first retest of that level as resistance, we should see the sellers come in to defend that level and press this thing lower. So that's what we've got at the moment. That's kind of the way we're going to be playing this guy. If the bulls close this market back above that pivot on an hourly session, all right, so right now it's 12:12, so we're only 12 minutes into the current hourly bar. But at the end of the hour, if this thing closes above the pivot, I could see us pressing back up into those 59.40s, maybe even back up into the R1. However, if we close back below that pivot, if the sellers are able to defend this level as resistance, then I could see us making a press back down into this level around those 58.40s. So that's what we'll be watching for here on crude. As far as the S&P 500 is concerned, There's a squat coming through here. As far as the SPOOs are concerned, we saw a rally coming into Globex, rather in Asia session, came into that R1 at those 38.70s. Rotation off of that level coming into London. So a nice spill really between those 38.70s and your S1 here at the 25.40s. A couple of rotations here, and we saw SPOOs kind of press back up into that pivot. Right on the cash open, a little bit of a rotation lower, and then we had a nice big press right into that overnight high. As we were mentioning in the room, coming into the opening, the cash open, we noticed that this was a key level here. You can see each time the market came in there, we've rolled over, rolled over, rolled over. So we were telling our members in the room, it's sitting kind of choppy, but we've seen good supply starting to come in around those 28.40s. And we were basically watching for a breakout of that overnight high on the SPOOs right at that 40 level. We were watching for that to fail in order to get short, and we were able to catch pretty nice shorts on the back of that failed breakout down into that open and down into the opening range lows, which we'll take a quick look at once we get to the charts. So that was kind of the game plan coming into the session this morning. We got that push higher right into that overnight high, right at those 40s. Nice breakout, but we saw rotations start to fail. And then once those rotations started to fail, that was kind of the hook, line, and sinker. And we had the rotation back to the bottom side of that range, which is kind of holding at the moment. You can see from that R1, where did we end up in? Right back into that S1. And now we found some support at that level, pressing back up into the pivot. So again, pivot is kind of a line in the sand today. If we close this hourly bar above it, we might see another press back up to retest those overnight highs. Alternatively, if we see this level hold as resistance, we could see another potential press back down into your S1s. That's kind of what we'll be watching for. This level right around the pivot is also lines up with a couple other confluence data factors, and we'll cover that in just a moment. So quick summary, crude oil above that pivot closes. If we get this hourly close above the pivot, look for a press up to those 59.40s. Close back below it on an hourly basis, look for a press back down into S1. Kind of similar with SPOOs, pivot. If we get a 1 hour close below that pivot, look for a move back down. If we get a close back up above that pivot on the hourly time frame, look for a press back up to those overnight highs. So that's what we got for you guys on the pivot charts. Now let's take a quick gander over at our 10-tick charts here. And so what you are seeing is that crude has made a bit of a recovery from that sell-off last week. What you see is a big bearish lead-in trend, kind of made some fresh lows here, came back up, held those lows. Now we are pressing a bit higher. This was kind of a pretty big level here, right around that overnight low 58.76s. So what you are seeing is some support starting to form around this level. If we do see this thing hold, we could look, as mentioned, for a press back up into those overnight highs. If I start to expand this chart, what you are seeing is that overnight low here at the moment is currently giving us some buying demand. What you will notice on this 10-tick chart is every kind of rotation back down into that overnight low, we're starting to see wicks forming. So there's wicks, 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 little breakdown. This is kind of seen as a deviation. We had a rotation back up into that zone. What do you see at the overnight low? Another wick. So that's kind of showing me that the buyers are starting to accumulate this market right around that overnight low into those 58.80s. So you could look for another rotation in here, hold that as support for a press back up to that VWAP. You've also got some previous highs sitting around here, and what looks to be some offers sitting up there as well, which could be a target here for the buyers. So like I said, if we see another rotation down into that overnight low, holds as support, could look to pick this thing up for a press to clear these buy stops above these shorts, coming back up to that Globex VWAP. That could be another nice level for a potential press back down. Alternatively, if it comes back in here, it starts to fail, and we get a nice breakout of that level, then we can start looking for rotations back in to qualify this for shorts. So we're kind of a level here, kind of no man's land. You can go either way, kind of in the middle of this range. So what you're seeing is if we get support, you can look for a press up into there. Not the highest probability trade. The higher probability trade would be to wait for these buy stops to get ran, find some resistance right around that open, previous day close, previous day high, and then press the sucker back down to that overnight low. So that's what we'll be watching for on that front. On S&P 500, you guys can see that the chop is real on this market. On this 10 tick here, we've got this zone right around the opening, or rather overnight highs, right around these 40s, high 38s, and the support right around these 24s. All right, so what you'll notice as I drag this sucker out is that we're kind of stuck between that range high and this range low. That's kind of the level that's been holding a support here on the SPOOs. What you have seen on today's session, kind of what we were mentioning in the room on the open, is that we'll be looking for a bid up into that overnight high. We're looking for that bid, looking for rotations to start failing. You saw one rotation, two rotations. This was kind of a break of market structure. That rotation back up, that was kind of the level at which, you know, buyers look to be stuck. It couldn't quite retest that previous high, and on that rotation lower, that's when we were starting to say, all right, this thing is looking like we want to spill back down. And that's kind of what we got here. Our first target was that previous day close, and then the second target was this zone. We've come into that zone now. We've held it one rotation, nice pull up here, another rotation back down into it. And again, you're seeing another wick showing us buyers starting to step in. One thing I like about this wick is that it coincides with some pretty large volume. That's kind of what you're seeing here. Each time it rotates back in that zone, the volume is starting to pick up, which is just suggesting to me at least that buyers are starting to step in around those levels. And so at the moment, we're at a level of resistance right now. All right, what you guys are seeing is that this zone is acting as resistance. You've got the open here, you've got your pivot PP as well right in this zone. You've got your previous day close, you've got your Globex VWAP, and you've got your pit session VWAP all acting as resistance right in this level here. So this is a good level for a potential short position. You know, you're seeing a couple rotations here, and this is your second rotation up into that level. Second rotation, you can still look to take a short. If it's anything more than the second rotation, at that point, it becomes a little bit more dangerous. But we've had a nice move down on that first rotation. So this level is still valid for one more test. If we get this test, we start seeing failure, we can see another press back down to these lows, at which point I think the selling will be a little bit overdone, and we can see another support, and then we get that press back up to the overnight highs. So that's kind of what we'll be watching for. That's really your first level of resistance here. If the market can press back above this, look for a move up into those 36s, get a nice little rotation or a pullback down, look to qualify some rotations within that consolidation as support for that press back up higher. So that's ultimately what we're going to be watching for here in both of these markets. And that's all that we've got as far as sessions and levels for, rather pivots and levels for the remainder of today's session. So with that being said, we will jump over to our TRADEPRO Performance Index, and we'll wrap up today's midday update. As mentioned earlier, our trading room did quite well, and I believe today's figures make a new all-time high for us. After tracking this for the last couple of months, we look to have made our best day in the room so far today, May 28th. Almost 56% of the traders were up, 25% were flat, and just under 20% were down for the session, giving us an awesome figure of 80.56% finishing positive on today's session, which is an absolutely awesome number to see. Great start to this week as we look to close out May. Another 3 trading sessions for May, and that month is going to be closed out, and my has it flown by. So 3 more days, great result on today's session. Our average is inching up here. We're trying to get to 70, see if we can hit that 70% milestone to close out May. And this is really what you guys want to be seeing. If you've ever been on the sidelines wondering, what this Trade Pro Academy is all about, we're really all about the results that our members get, because when you guys win, so do we. And it's kind of the way that we structure this business. So this is what the team's doing. Numbers don't lie. 67% of the time, almost on a daily basis, we have majority of the room is ending the day green, trading live capital in a live environment. So that should be everything for today. Just gonna wrap that up. Let me flip the camera back on over to myself, and then we will hit you guys with the sign off. There we are. So the camera's back on me here. And if you will be trading into the end of the session, remember those 3 rules: patience, diligence, and discipline are going to be key as you come into the latter half of this session. Like I said, we don't have too much in terms of economic releases, so technicals will be quite key, and a squawk will be also pretty key as well, just in case anything comes up. Any updates or developments to that China-US trade war will be something to keep in sight as well. So with that being said, take care, guys. Until tomorrow, good luck and good trading. We'll pick this thing up tomorrow afternoon. Until then, take care.